In his dialectical introduction to Molesworth, Scullion and Nixon's The Marketization of Higher Education and the Student as Consumer, Frank Furedi briefly outlines a concerning belief among some academics that mankind's feudal devotion to resource mining and the propagation of self-interest has woven a neoliberal agenda deep within the commodified fabric of higher education. A belief somewhat echoed in my own findings, which, at its core, casts doubt on the sustainability of the current student as customer model, making the future course of this market-infused educational paragon enigmatically uncertain. Framing students as customers forces them into a consumer role in which they lack ownership of their education, and in this their expectations are treated as passive rather than active. A fallacy unless they're invested in shared enterprise. So this case study posits a question as a solution to the student as customer problem. What if students weren't viewed as customers at all, and were instead seen as being 100% financially and organisationally cooperative in their own learner journeys? Sustainability in higher education is inexorably entwined with financial stability, so any movement towards an even more sustainable model must have at its core a map to making even more money. However, rising tuition fees, fluctuating government policies, and increasing visa regulations, as well as a lack of appropriate accommodation, all shift student expectations. My own data confirms at least the shift, as well as revealing a common reported leadership challenge to be maintaining a high level of student satisfaction. The current leadership proposals to marginalise the negative effects of the student as customer model, although meritorious and valiant, may be moot. The rising of the mid, Davis's 1966 frog pond effect aside, the voices of the unspoken and undereducated middle have become loud. Very, very loud. And it might be impossible for academic leadership to hear themselves over the sound of all this satisfaction checking and popularity measuring. Indeed, my own results show 29% of respondents acknowledging the commodification while simultaneously denying its impact. Therefore, a significant effect of the student as customer model might be that it's become so absorbed into the minds of the current academic leadership that they find it difficult to distinguish between financial transaction and academic relationship. Interestingly, in my own findings, the respondents who felt there was little to no impact on academic standards had the least leadership experience of all participants. So either experience is playing a bigger role in developing the ambassadorial foresight to see the negatives than anticipated, or something else has changed in the past 2 to 5 years. So why not take their money and shut up? Why not embrace the student as customer model and instead of seeing it as a problem, see it as the solution? For one, it's not sustainable. It disenfranchises students by treating them as passive consumers rather than active stakeholders. And secondly, true investment goes beyond cash money. It's about intellectual effort, time, and cooperation. And what makes this all the more frustrating is that academic leaders know this. The majority of the literature shows that leaders have been trying to mitigate the damage being caused. My own data shows 100% of respondents citing strengthening communication with students as their primary focus in terms of developing successful leadership strategies to cope with the student as customer model. However, it's the open responses from my survey with their ambassadorial focus on sustainability and strategic partnership in terms of policies and leadership practices that really interests me and lends support to this case study's major response to the student as customer problem. Specifically, the responses citing the need for replacing student surveys with more meaningful feedback mechanisms, the need for setting clearer standards, and the strong need for confirmation of mutual expectations between students and academic staff. If ambassadorial leadership really must engage all stakeholders through transparent communication and evaluation, then, to blandish the literature and counter these responses, this case study proposes introducing a students as investors framework. In line with Popkova and Sergi's Direction for Mobility, and similar to the University of Liverpool's Leadership Commitment Framework, this would systematically lay out a set of maxims for students to measure their contribution in the shaping of their own collaborative learning experience. This framework would permit students to feel like active evaluators of their own academic progress, rather than mere statistics for success through satisfaction-driven customer surveys. Examples would include peer-led evaluation models that value skill development over grade satisfaction, universities shifting to formative feedback models for the majority, if not all, of their assessments. This framework would alter institutional language and promote a shift from university-run decision-making to student and faculty joint governance. Examples would include student-led curriculum, assessment design, and decision-making, and lead away from customer satisfaction rhetoric. This framework would foster movement from passive content consumption to committed active project-based learning, which would increase employability metrics, provide early career project management and development opportunities, and make a greater distinction between school, further, and higher education in the UK. This would include piloting research cooperative initiatives to test viability and highlight potential difficulties of including inexperienced learners in such high-level discussions with academic staff. This framework would allow students to see themselves as long-term stakeholders, feeling the impact of their time at the institution well after graduation. Examples would include more cross-curriculum research-led teaching, peer mentorship, and interdisciplinary projects, tuition-free restructuring, reinforcing long-term investment and lifelong liability. Okay, but really, how can universities practically transition from the current marketized model to this new cooperative model? There are 4 key areas where significant changes would need to be strategically planned by academic leadership to ensure sustainability. Policy changes. Serious rethinking from academic leadership, including potential restructuring of funding, decision-making processes, and learning design. Institutional partnerships. HEIs would need to collaborate more with cooperative networks, businesses, employers, and governments. Stakeholder buy-in. Prioritizing the engagement of students, faculty, and policymakers to support the changes wholeheartedly. Measuring the impact. Removal of NSS-driven satisfaction grading, with success being measured through student engagement, knowledge application, and graduate impact. Additionally, in terms of commercial awareness, some aspects of academic management and leadership would likely need to remain the same, including accreditation, funding, quality control, research subsidies, and market oversight. Beyond these concerns, this new model would not solve the information problem. Higher education is a post-experience good, meaning students and institutions lack the necessary information about quality until long after decisions are made, potentially leading to market failures. And there is one area in which the new model could demonstrate significant progress, and that is through externalities. The benefits of higher education extend beyond individual students to society: democracy, reduced inequality, and lower public costs. Education is a partnership, not a transaction. Dewey, 1897, stated in his essay, My Pedagogic Creed, that education is a process for living and not a preparation for future living. And he might be right. And as an academic leader, I want to lean into this problem. I want it discussed openly and often. Higher education needs to be framed as a lifelong cooperative investment in knowledge, skills, and community. Because it always has been, and without action, HEIs might become nothing but customer service centres. So this case study implores universities and educators to evolve their approach and empower students as co-creators of their learning through a recognised national student as investor framework. No business survives on one-time custom. To thrive and grow, you need repeat business. And the best way to get repeat business is by courting customers as investors. Thank you for listening.